Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Well, today we're going to be working with some music sheets from my shop. And these are music sheets that I've collected throughout the years, and I've actually scanned them, cleaned them up, and I've created digital images to use for my Christmas cards as well as some other designs that I've created. Now, digital images are great because if you want a certain type of background or design and you want it to look vintage, but you don't necessarily want to use your vintage image, you can easily download your printable and print it several times. And I've printed this background just on regular printer paper. It doesn't even need to be fancy. It was a background, so I really didn't need it to be very heavy because I knew I was going to layer it onto some designer cardstock. Now, not only can you create cards with your music sheets, but you can also create vintage looking tags. So I had a really great time after I had downloaded and printed my music sheets, just creating some Christmas cards as well as some tags. Now, if you remember last week, I created an envelope, and I had said that I had created a card that went perfectly with this envelope, and this is actually the card we're going to be creating today. It's really fun to create your handmade greeting cards, but then to also create a matching envelope just takes it to the next level. And I think the recipients are just so awestruck when they get these beautiful handmade cards with matching envelopes. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, this green paper that I'm going to be using is also from my shop, and it is one of my paper packs. And I'll make sure that I link my products that I use to create this card down below for you. All of my digital images are on sale, and they've been on sale all month long for my Christmas and July celebration. So if there's any digital images that you want to pick up, this month is the time to get them while they're on sale. Alright, so I knew I was going to be making a 5x7 card, so I went ahead and I trimmed down all of my cardstock before I got started. And I found a piece of green coordinating cardstock that would look good on my background as well. So I trimmed that down and I adhered that to my background. And then I took my music sheet that I had already trimmed down and I added that. And it really is a simple background. It's just 3 sheets. So after I had all 3 sheets adhered to my cardstock, then I wanted to go ahead and make it look a little bit more vintage. So I grabbed my Distress Oxide, and the color that I'm using is Vintage Photo, and I just simply added it to my music sheet. Music sheets, vintage music sheets look great and old already, but it's really nice when you can add a little bit more distress color to them, just to add a little bit more of a antique or a vintage look. Now, the set that we're working with is the same set that we worked with last week, and this is Yuletide, and this is from the collection that came out last year. We're going to go ahead and stamp the wreath right on top of the music sheet, and you're going to want to make sure that you take your Santa and you try to figure out exactly where the bottom is for your Santa, because that Santa is going to go right in the middle of the wreath, and you want to make sure that you have it proportioned nicely before you actually start your stamping. And then after you get a couple of nice imprints on your music sheet, then what I did is I went ahead and I took some clear embossing powder and I just put it right over the wreath. Now, you don't have to do this, but I always like the way that the embossing powder shines, especially when you're making vintage cards. It really is a nice contrast to some of the muted vintage colors to have a little bit of shine, and that's why I like to do that. Also, when I am coloring some of my images, I also like to use embossing powder because it seals my ink, and that way when I'm going to add my coloring, I can make sure that I'm not going to have any smears at all. And then, of course, after you get all of your embossing powder on your image, you're going to want to go ahead and take your heating tool to set your embossing powder. Alright, so once your embossing powder is completely set, you're going to want to go ahead and take your cardstock and set it aside, because now we're going to start working on the Santa. And the Santa, we're going to actually be fussy cutting, so you're going to want to go ahead and get a white piece of paper, and you're going to get some ink that will work nice with your Copic colors. So you want to get some sort of archival ink so that way it won't smear. Now, again, I'm going to be using embossing powder, so if you don't have any ink that works well with Copic colors, you can easily use embossing powder to set your ink, and then that way you don't have to worry about it smearing. Alright, so just like I did my wreath, I added my embossing powder, and then I took my heating tool and I went ahead and I heat set my embossing powder. That way I can go ahead and get started on my Copic coloring. Now, you don't have to be an expert colorist to color up the Santa, and that's one of the reasons I really like this Santa. He is a very nostalgic Santa, but he's very easy to color. As you can see, after I had stamped him, he already has some of his highlights and his shading, so it's really easy to be able to see where you need to add some of your extra colors. So for my Santa, all I did was take a couple of reds. I took a darker red and then a lighter red. And with the darker red, I went ahead and outlined the suit, and then I came in with the lighter red to go ahead and bring in the shading. But it really doesn't take a lot. And then after I had all of my red for his hat and his suit and his jacket, then I went ahead and took the black for his belt and also for his boots. And then finally, I took some of the beige color for his face. So like I said, it's a really easy color image to color, and you don't have to be an expert at all. Okay, so after I had his suit and his belt and his boots all colored in, then like I said, I went ahead and took some of my flesh color and I colored in his face. And then for the most part, my Santa was complete. So at this point, I was ready to fussy cut my Santa. And this is another thing, or another reason I really like this Santa, is he is really easy to fussy cut. So you don't have to worry about masking him too much. It's just not a problem to fussy cut him at all. And I was able to cut him out in no time. And then I went ahead and took some of my adhesive and I put him right in the middle of that wreath. And as you can see, I didn't put him right in the middle. I put him towards the bottom of the wreath, and that's why I said earlier you want to make sure that you kind of line up your Santa so you have an idea of where your wreath needs to be placed. Alright, so with my Santa in place, now it's time to just add some finishing touches. So I went ahead and took my paper distresser and I edged up the paper to go ahead and give it a frayed look, and then I took my adhesive and I put my cardstock right on my white card paper. And then to make sure that my Santa was adhered nicely, and also just to give it a little bit of a vintage tinge, I took some of my vintage collage medium and I rubbed that right over my Santa Claus. If you've never used the collage medium, it kind of is like a decoupage sort of. It is an adhesive and it helps to adhere some of your paper down, but it comes in a couple different colors, and it comes in matte, which is clear, but I'm also using the vintage tone, which is a little bit more of a brownish tone. And then finally, to finish off my wreath, I'm going to add some of my Nuvo drops. So I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create the card along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. And don't forget to leave me a comment. Don't forget, I'm going to be giving away something on every single video, and I'm going to be doing my drawings at the end of the month. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Alright everybody, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.